Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Cheating Tales Lab. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Unraveling. Sergeant Major Darius Kincaid stood at attention on the observation post of Forward Operating Base Thunder, his muscles tense as he scanned the rugged Afghan terrain. The wind whipped against his face, carrying the acrid scent of gunpowder and diesel fuel. After 15 years of service, his weathered features bore the marks of countless missions and sleepless nights. Tonight marked his final watch of this deployment, but an inexplicable unease gnawed at his gut. Still on watch, Sergeant Major? Lieutenant Marcus Chin approached, his boots crunching on the gravel. Most guys would be celebrating their last night. Someone's got to keep these boys alive, sir, replied, his eyes never leaving the horizon. His hand unconsciously moved to the breast pocket of his uniform where he kept the photos of his family, his teenage daughter Ruby and his wife Corinne. The memory of meeting Corinne flooded his mind. He'd been home on leave, drowning his sorrows at O'Malley's bar after losing 2 men in an ambush. She'd walked in with a group of friends, her laughter cutting through his dark thoughts. One look at her bright smile, and he knew she was different. They'd talked until closing time, and he'd missed his flight back to base the next morning. Worth every minute of the ass-chewing he'd received. Sir, permission to speak freely? Private James Rodriguez interrupted his thoughts, approaching with a tablet in hand. What is it, Rodriguez? Your wife's been trying to reach you through the base communications center. They said it's urgent. Dash's jaw tightened. The last few video calls with Corinne had been strained, her usual warmth replaced by clipped responses and averted eyes. He'd written it off as deployment stress. 15 months was a long time to be apart, but his instincts screamed that something was wrong. Thank you, Private. I'll head there now. Dash turned to Lieutenant Chen. Sir? Go ahead, Sergeant Major. We've got this covered. The communications center hummed with activity as Dash entered. Before he could reach the video terminal, his satellite phone buzzed, a restricted number. His heart rate spiked as he answered. Dad. Ruby's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. He could hear the terror beneath her forced calm. I need help. Moms, she has this new man. Him and his friends. They've taken over our house. Ruby, slow down. What do you mean, taken over? Dash's voice remained steady, but his free hand clenched into a fist. They're everywhere, drinking, smoking, making me clean up after them. A muffled sob. Dad, they're planning something bad. I heard them talking about ambushing you when you come home. They said, her voice cracked. They said they'll make me watch. Where's your mother during all this? She's with him. Corbin. She chose him, Dad. The betrayal in Ruby's voice cut deeper than any knife. I tried to stand up to them, told them you'd make them regret it. They just laughed. Glass shattered in the background, followed by rough male voices. I have to go. They're coming. Please hurry, Dad. I'm scared. The line went dead. Dash stood motionless, his mind processing the information. The rage building inside him wasn't hot. It was arctic, freezing everything in its path. He moved through the base like a ghost, his footsteps carrying him directly to Lieutenant Colonel Ramsey's office. He found Ramsey at his desk, reviewing mission reports. The older officer looked up, his expression changing as he registered Dash's demeanor. Jesus, Kincaid. What happened? Sir, I need an immediate discharge. Family emergency. Ramsey leaned back, studying him. You're 3 days from completing your tour. What's so urgent it can't wait? My daughter's in danger. My wife. The words tasted like ash. She's allowed criminals into our home. They're planning an ambush. Have you contacted local law enforcement? With all due respect, sir, this is personal. I need to handle it myself. Kincaid, think about what you're saying. 15 years of service, multiple commendations, on track for Master Sergeant. You throw that away now, you'll never get it back. Dash met his CO's gaze. A career means nothing if I don't have a family to come home to, sir. I'm requesting immediate discharge. Your signature or not, I'm leaving this base tonight. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Ramsey pulled out a form from his desk. You're one of the best soldiers I've ever commanded, Kincaid. Don't make me regret this. He began filling out the paperwork. Whatever you're planning, remember your training. Cool head. Clear mind. Yes, sir. And Kincaid? Ramsey looked up. Make the bastards pay. Within hours, Dash had processed out and secured a seat on a military transport headed stateside. As the plane lifted off, he pulled out the photo of Ruby from his pocket. She was laughing in the picture, caught mid-twirl at her last birthday party. His little girl. The thought of her afraid in her own home, surrounded by criminals, made his blood freeze. Corinne's betrayal was a separate wound, one he'd deal with later. Right now, his mission was clear. Secure his daughter, eliminate the threat. He closed his eyes, already formulating plans, contingencies, angles of attack. They thought they were laying a trap for him? They'd learn what it meant to cage a predator. The flight crew gave him a wide berth. They'd seen that look before. The 1,000-yard stare of a man preparing for war. Most would assume he was reliving battlefield memories. They were wrong. He was planning a new one. Chapter 2. The Betrayal Revealed. The rental car's engine idled quietly as Dash observed his house from 3 blocks away. The 2-story colonial he'd bought with his combat pay bonus sat like a stranger wearing familiar clothes. Beer cans littered the once pristine lawn, and cigarette smoke drifted from the open windows. The American flag he'd hung was gone, replaced by a torn NASCAR banner. 2 men lounged on his front porch, passing a bottle between them. Their laughter carried on the evening air, punctuated by crude jokes and profanity. Dash memorized their faces, noting the amateur way they carried their concealed weapons, obvious bulges at their hips that screamed poor training. His phone buzzed. Frank Miller, his father's old partner from the police force, had texted an address for their meet. 20 minutes later, Dash walked into O'Reilly's pub, a dingy establishment far from his neighborhood. Frank sat in a back booth, his gray hair thinner than Dash remembered, but his eyes still sharp as ever. "You look like hell, kid," Frank said as Dash slid into the booth. "What do you have for me?" Frank pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Your wife's new friend is Corbin Hayes, local small-time criminal who inherited Daddy's bar and turned it into a front for dealing. Minor record, assault, possession, nothing that stuck. But his crew's been getting bolder. Word is they're moving up to distribution." Dash opened the envelope, studying the surveillance photos. Corbin Hayes had the look of a man who enjoyed hurting people. Scarred knuckles, snake tattoo crawling up his neck, dead eyes. "How long?" Dash asked, his voice flat. Frank hesitated. "The affair? About a year, near as I can tell. Started showing up at Hayes Bar while you were deployed. My guy got these shots 3 months ago." The photos showed Corinne leaving a motel with Hayes, his hand possessively on her lower back. She was smiling, the same smile that had once been reserved for Dash. "She's been making regular withdrawals from your joint account," Frank continued. 10 grand last month alone. Drug money? Medical bills. Actually, her mother's got cancer. Stage 4. Expensive experimental treatments not covered by insurance." Frank sighed. Hayes offered to help with the costs. Classic predator move. Find someone vulnerable, offer salvation with strings attached. That doesn't excuse bringing criminals into my home. Endangering my daughter. Dash's voice could have frozen hell itself. "No, it doesn't." Frank pulled out more photos. Hayes' crew, bottom feeders and washouts. "They've been using your place as a party house, but my sources say bigger things are coming. Drug shipments, possibly weapons, names and locations. Everything's in there. But listen, kid, these guys aren't soldiers. They're thugs with guns and bad attitudes. You go in hot, people will die. That's their choice to make." Dash stood, tucking the envelope into his jacket. "Thank you, Frank. I owe you." Dash. Frank's voice stopped him. "Your father was my partner for 20 years. Best man I ever knew. When he died, I promised him I'd look out for you. Whatever you're planning, be smart. Be thorough. And when it's done, make sure nothing leads back to you. Nothing will be left to find." Dash drove aimlessly, processing the information. The rational part of his mind understood Corinne's desperation, Her mother had practically raised her after her father abandoned them. But the betrayal went beyond the affair. She brought dangerous men into their home, exposed their daughter to criminals, violated everything they'd built together. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. A video. His thumb hesitated over the play button, already knowing what he'd see. The clip showed Ruby in their kitchen, forced to serve drinks to Hayes' crew. One of them grabbed her arm, laughing as she pulled away. The timestamp was from 3 hours ago. The phone cracked in Dash's grip. He pulled over, resting his forehead against the steering wheel, letting the rage wash through him. When he lifted his head, his eyes were clear. The time for investigation was over. Now it was time for action. He needed intel, surveillance, and resources. Time to call in favors. His first call was to Mateo Mac Vargas, his former unit's communication specialist. Mac had gotten out 2 years ago and started a private security consulting firm. "I need eyes and ears," Dash said when Mac answered. "Full coverage, remote access. You're calling in that favor from Kandahar?" Mac's voice was serious. "Must be important. Life and death." A pause. "Send me the address. Give me 24 hours. Dash booked a motel room with cash, spreading Frank's intel across the bed. He created a timeline of Corinne's betrayal, marking key dates and events. The pattern was clear. Hayes had targeted her specifically, probably after learning about Dash's deployment schedule. The financial records showed escalating withdrawals coinciding with her mother's treatment schedule. A knock at the door interrupted his analysis. His hand moved to the weapon at his back before recognizing Mac's distinctive pattern. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 slow. Mac hadn't changed much, still rail-thin with perpetually messy hair and caffeine-stained teeth. He carried a large duffel bag and a laptop case. "You look like shit," Mac said by way of greeting. "When's the last time you slept?" "Sleep when we're dead. What did you bring me?" Mac unpacked his bag, revealing an array of surveillance equipment. Latest gen thermal cameras, directional mics, signal interceptors. Military grade, very illegal. "Don't ask where I got them. Can you get them installed without being seen?" "Already did. Drove by an hour ago in a utility truck. Cameras are up, penetrating the exterior walls. Getting feeds now." Mac opened his laptop, showing multiple video windows. "Your house is hot, boss. Counting at least 8 hostiles, multiple weapons. They're not professionals, but they're dangerous." Dash watched the screens, memorizing positions and patterns. He saw Corinne moving through the house like a ghost, head down, shoulders hunched. In the kitchen, Ruby washed dishes while one of Hayes' men leered at her. "Audio's coming through," Max said, adjusting some settings. "Want to hear?" "Play it." The voices filled the room, crude and slurred with alcohol. Hayes was holding court in the living room, bragging about his plans. "Stupid bitch thinks we're helping with her mom's treatment." Hayes laughed. "By the time Soldier Boy gets home, we'll own this place. Perfect distribution point. Nice quiet neighborhood, nobody suspects. And if he causes trouble..." Hayes patted the gun at his hip. "We'll make his little girl watch what happens to heroes." The laptop screen cracked under Dash's grip. Mac carefully moved his equipment back. "I know that look," Mac said quietly. "What's the plan?" "I'm going to kill them all." "No, you're not." Mac held up a hand as Dash turned to him. "You're going to destroy them. Death is too quick. You're going to take everything they have, everything they are, and leave them broken. That's what they deserve." Dash was silent for a long moment. "You're right. I need to do this smart. Clinical. Make them suffer. That's the Dash I know." Mac grinned. "The surveillance is a gift. What else do you need?" "Equipment. Weapons. Clean phones. And I need you to monitor the feeds. Coordinate my movements when I go in. Consider it done." Mac started packing up. "One more thing. I had my guy run background on Hayes' crew. Most are nobodies, but 2 have connections to bigger players in town. This could go deeper than you think. Doesn't matter how deep it goes. I'll dig them all out." After Mac left, Dash returned to his planning. The surveillance feeds showed him everything he needed: guard rotations, weapons locations, vulnerabilities. Hayes ran his operation like an amateur, no proper security protocols or contingencies. Ruby appeared on one of the feeds, Sneaking into the hall closet, she pulled out a photo, one of Dash in his dress uniform, and hugged it to her chest. "Please come home, Dad," she whispered. "I know you'll make them pay." Dash touched the screen. "I'm coming, baby girl, and they're going to learn what real fear feels like." Chapter 3. Reconnaissance and Resolve. The next 3 days became an exercise in observation. Dash utilized Mac's surveillance network to document every aspect of the invasion of his home. The feeds revealed a disturbing routine. Hayes' crew treated his house like their personal playground, with no respect for property or decency. Through the directional microphones, Dash learned their names, their habits, their weaknesses. Billy the Snake Thompson, Hayes' right-hand man, had a gambling problem and owed money to dangerous people. Marcus Reed was a coward who talked tough but flinched at loud noises. Each piece of intelligence became another weapon in Dash's arsenal. "Check this out," Mac's voice crackled through Dash's earpiece as he monitored from his surveillance position. "Hayes just got a call about a major shipment coming in. They're planning to use your garage as a distribution center." Dash watched through high-powered binoculars as Hayes paced the front porch, arguing with someone on the phone. "Audio? Enhancing now." Hayes' voice came through clearly. "Don't care what the boss says, we're ready. The soldier won't be a problem. Yeah, we've got his kid under control. The wife too. Stupid bitch thinks we're helping with her mom's medical bills." A harsh laugh. "By the time she figures out we've been pocketing most of it, it'll be too late." The binoculars creaked in Dash's grip. Not only were they planning to ambush him, but they'd been stealing the money meant for his mother-in-law's treatment. The layers of betrayal and cruelty ran deep. "Got movement in the kitchen," Mac reported. "Ruby's cleaning up their mess again." "Wait, Hayes is heading that way." Dash switched his view to the kitchen window. Hayes swaggered in, deliberately knocking over the trash Ruby had just collected. The audio picked up his mocking laughter. "Oops. Better clean that up, princess. Wouldn't want Daddy to come home to a mess." Hayes reached for Ruby's face. "Maybe I'll keep you around after we deal with him. Could use a pretty little maid." Ruby jerked away, her voice steady despite her fear. "My father will make you regret this. All of you." "Your father?" Hayes grabbed her arm roughly. "Your father's 1,000 miles away playing soldier. He's not here to protect you now." Dash's finger tightened on his binoculars. Every fiber of his being screamed to intervene, but he forced himself to remain focused. Tactical thinking, strategic patience, break-in surveillance, Mac's voice crackled. 2 new vehicles pulling up. "You're going to want to see this." A black SUV and a Mercedes sedan parked in the driveway. 3 men in expensive suits emerged, a stark contrast to Hayes' crew of thugs. "Running facial recognition," Mac muttered. "Got hits." The big guy is Vincent Romano, suspected ties to organized crime. The others are lawyers for Shield Development Corporation. "What's a development company doing with Hayes?" Dash whispered. "Pulling records now. Shield Development's been buying up properties in your neighborhood. Massive redevelopment project in the works. But they've hit snags with holdout homeowners, and Hayes helps convince people to sell." The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about drugs. It was about real estate, money laundering, corruption at the highest levels. Through the surveillance feeds, Dash watched the meeting unfold in his living room. Hayes played the gracious host, serving drinks in glasses Ruby had been forced to clean. "The highway expansion project is a go," one of the lawyers announced. "Once we secure the remaining properties, construction begins. The warehouse district will make perfect distribution points." Romano nodded approvingly. "Hayes, you've done good work here. Taking over this house gives us a perfect base of operations." "The wife's signature on the deed transfer yet?" "Working on it," Hayes replied. "She'll sign. Her mother's treatments are expensive, and we're her only hope of paying." "And the husband?" Hayes grinned maliciously. "Got a warm welcome planned for the soldier boy. By the time we're done, there won't be anyone left to contest the sale." Corinne entered the room, looking pale and drawn. The past year had taken its toll, her once vibrant presence now diminished to a shadow. "Corbin," she said softly, "the hospital called. Mom's treatment. They said the payment didn't go through." Hayes waved her away. "Handle it later, babe. We're in a meeting." But they said the last 3 payments were never received. They're talking about stopping treatment, I said later. Hayes' hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. The warning in his grip was clear. Dash watched his wife's face crumple, finally seeing the full scope of Hayes' manipulation. Corinne had betrayed him, yes, but she'd also been expertly played by a predator who recognized her vulnerability. Sir, Mac's voice interrupted. Got the financial traces you asked for. Hayes has been pocketing most of the money Corinne withdrew for her mother's treatment. He's been giving the hospital just enough to keep them from cutting off care completely. Connection to Shield Development? They're using multiple shell companies to hide property acquisitions. Hayes softens up targets, forces sales through intimidation, then Shield Development swoops in looking legitimate. Classic gentrification through corruption. Dash processed the information. The initial betrayal had evolved into something far more sinister. These men weren't just invading his home. They were destroying lives throughout the community, using his family as pawns in their scheme. Mac, I need everything you can get me on Shield Development. Board members, financial records, connections to city officials. Already on it. But boss, this goes deep. Taking them down won't be simple. Nothing worth doing ever is. Dash lowered his binoculars, his resolve crystallizing into diamond-hard purpose. Keep monitoring. I need to make a call. He dialed Frank's number, speaking quietly when the old detective answered. Frank, I need a favor. Shield Development Corporation. What do you know about them? A heavy pause. Bad people hiding behind good paperwork. They're buying up half the town, but nobody can prove where their money comes from. Why? They're connected to Hayes. This is bigger than a home invasion. They're using my house as part of their operation. Jesus, kid. You're talking about some powerful people. They've got judges and politicians in their pocket. Then they should have picked a different house to invade. Dash's voice was arctic. I need you to be ready. When this goes down, there's going to be evidence. A lot of it. I need someone I trust to make sure it reaches the right people. You sure about this? These people don't play games. Neither do I. After hanging up, Dash returned to his observation post. Through Mac's surveillance network, he watched Hayes' crew settling in for the night. Their complacency would be their downfall. No proper security protocols, no contingency plans, just arrogant thugs who thought they were untouchable. Ruby appeared on one of the feeds, quietly cleaning up the mess from the meeting. She moved carefully, head down, but her shoulders remained straight. His daughter was scared but unbroken. She was a survivor, like him. When she thought no one was watching, Ruby slipped into the hallway closet, her secret sanctuary. She pulled out Dash's photo again, touching his face through the glass. I knew you'd come, Dad, she whispered. They think you're just a soldier, but I know what you really are. You're the monster that monsters fear. Dash touched his earpiece. Mac, prep the equipment. Tonight, we start taking back what's ours. Going in? Not yet. First, we make them understand what fear really feels like. They want to play predator. A cold smile touched Dash's lips. Let's show them what it means to be prey. The sun set over his violated home, marking the end of Dash's reconnaissance phase. He had his intelligence, his resources, and most importantly, his targets. Hayes and his crew thought they were laying a trap for a returning soldier. They were about to learn the difference between a soldier and a warrior. In the growing darkness, Dash began his preparations. Each weapon checked and rechecked, each piece of equipment tested, each angle of approach memorized. Come morning, the predators would discover they had caged themselves with something far more dangerous than they could imagine. The first phase of his mission was complete. He understood the enemy, their weaknesses, their plans. Now it was time for the next phase, and there would be no mercy for those who had threatened his family. Chapter 4. Operation Home Invasion. The digital clock on Mac's surveillance equipment read 2:13 when Dash began his assault. He moved through the neighborhood like a predator, his dark, tactical gear absorbing what little light penetrated the area. The familiar weight of his combat knife against his thigh kept him focused. Security camera feed loop is active, Mac's voice crackled through his earpiece. You've got 3 minutes before the system resets. Dash approached his house from the rear, noting the beer bottles and cigarette butts littering his once pristine lawn. Two of Hayes' men dozed on lawn chairs by the back door, a bottle of whiskey between them. Amateurs. 5 tangos inside, Mac reported. Hayes and 2 others in the master bedroom. 1 in the guest room. 1 in the kitchen. Ruby. Safe in her room. Doors locked from the inside. Corinne? Guest bedroom with the target designated Charlie. Dash's jaw clenched. He pushed the image from his mind, focusing on the mission. The 2 guards never saw him coming. A precise strike to the base of the skull rendered the first unconscious. The second managed half a snore before joining his companion in darkness. Power cut in 3, 2, 1. The house plunged into blackness. Dash moved through the back door, his night vision goggles turning the darkness into shades of green. Confused voices echoed from upstairs. The hell? Check the breaker. I ain't going down there. Useless. Heavy footsteps on the stairs, the kitchen guard heading for the basement. Dash intercepted him at the bottom step. One hand over the mouth, the other applying precise pressure to the carotid artery. The guard slumped without a sound. Hey Joey, you find the breaker? Hayes' voice carried from above. Dash keyed his radio twice, the signal for Mac to initiate Phase 2. The house phone began ringing, followed by cell phones throughout the building. The hell? Multiple voices now, confusion turning to fear. Dash ascended the stairs, each step measured and silent. The guard in the guest room emerged, pistol drawn incorrectly, finger on the trigger, poor stance. A liability to himself. Joey? That you? Dash's response was swift. A strike to the weapon hand sent the pistol clattering. A knee to the solar plexus doubled the guard over. An elbow to the base of the skull ended the conversation. Something's wrong. Hayes' voice, closer now. Everyone up. Now. The master bedroom door opened. One of Hayes' lieutenants stepped out, racking the slide of a shotgun. Dash could have taken him out immediately, but he waited. Let them bunch up. Check on the girl, Hayes commanded. She might be trying something. Dash's blood ran cold. Not Ruby. Not anymore. The lieutenant approached Ruby's door, shotgun raised. Hey princess, daddy want? Dash struck. A throw knife embedded in the lieutenant's gun hand. The shotgun dropped as the man screamed. Dash closed the distance in 2 steps, driving his knee into the lieutenant's diaphragm before slamming his head into the wall. The body crumpled. What the foo? Hayes appeared in the doorway, a pistol in his shaking hands. His eyes widened as he recognized the dark figure in his hallway. No, you're not due back. Dash didn't let him finish. A flashbang through the doorway sent Hayes and his remaining guards staggering. Dash followed the explosion into the room. The guard recovered first, swinging wildly with a knife. Dash caught the arm, twisted, and dislocated the shoulder in one fluid motion. The guard's scream cut off as Dash drove a fist into his throat. Hayes had managed to keep hold of his pistol. He fired twice, the shots going wide in the darkness. Dash closed the distance, stripping the weapon away with practiced efficiency. Hayes threw a clumsy punch. Dash caught it, broke 2 fingers, then drove his elbow into Hayes' temple. Please. Hayes slurred as he hit the ground. We can deal. Dash's boot to his jaw ended the negotiation. He zip-tied Hayes' hands behind his back, ignoring the whimpers of pain from the broken fingers. Mom? Ruby's voice from her room. Dad? Stay inside, sweetheart, Dash called. His voice steady despite the rage still pumping through his veins. Just a few minutes more. All targets down, he reported to Mac. Begin Phase 3. Dash dragged Hayes' unconscious form to the living room, securing him to a heavy chair. The other guards he zip-tied back-to-back in pairs, leaving them in their own filth. He found Corinne huddled in the guest room corner, her eyes wide with fear and recognition. Dash, she whispered. I can explain. Later. His tone left no room for discussion. Stay here until I clear the house completely. Room by room, Dash swept his violated home, securing weapons and gathering phones. Mac's voice guided him to the hidden cameras Hayes' crew had installed, each one documented as evidence. When he was satisfied the house was secure, Dash returned to Ruby's door. It's safe now, baby. You can come out. The door opened slowly. Ruby stood there in her pajamas, tears streaming down her face. Dad. She launched herself into his arms. Dash held his daughter tight, feeling her shoulders shake with relieved sobs. "I've got you. They'll never touch you again. I knew you'd come," she whispered. "I told them you would, but they just laughed. They're not laughing now." Dash stroked her hair. "Go pack a bag, okay? You'll stay with Aunt Sarah tonight. But no arguments. What's coming next? You don't need to see." Ruby studied his face, then nodded. She'd seen enough violence in the past weeks. Some things a daughter shouldn't witness, even in the name of justice. Dash waited until Ruby was packing, then returned to the living room. Hayes was beginning to stir, blood trickling from his split lip. "Mac, start the recording," Dash commanded. "It's time Mr. Hayes and I had a conversation about consequences." Chapter 5. Truth and Confrontation. Blood dripped from Hayes' nose onto his designer shirt as he regained consciousness. His eyes darted around the room, taking in his bound companions and the dark figure standing before him. "You know," Dash's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "In Afghanistan, I learned a lot about interrogation. Not the clean, official methods. The ones that leave marks." He drew his tactical knife, letting the blade catch what little light filtered through the windows. Hayes' eyes fixed on the metal edge. "Listen, man. This is all a misunderstanding." The knife slashed, opening a thin line across Hayes' forearm. Not deep, but enough to sting. Enough to promise worse to come. Wrong answer. Dash pulled up a chair, sitting face to face with his wife's lover. "Let's try again. Everything you did to my daughter. Everything you planned for my house. Every lie you told. Start talking. You're insane. I'll have you arrested." Another cut, parallel to the first. Hayes hissed in pain. "That's 2 wrong answers. Would you like to try for 3? Okay. Hayes slumped in his bonds. It started as a simple score. Rich Army wife. Husband deployed. Vulnerable mark. I didn't know about the kid at first. Keep going. Your wife. Corinne. She was at my bar one night, crying about her mother's cancer bills. I played the sympathetic ear, offered to help with the payments. A bitter laugh. She was so grateful, so desperate. It was easy. Dash's knuckles whitened around the knife handle. The house. That came later. We needed a distribution point in a nice neighborhood. Somewhere cops wouldn't look too hard. Your place was perfect, good location, respected owner serving overseas. Who'd suspect? My daughter. The knife pressed against Hayes' throat. What were your plans for her? Fear sparked in Hayes' eyes. Nothing. I swear. The cleaning, the cooking, that was just to keep her in line. Show her who was boss. We weren't going to. The knife bit deeper. A bead of blood welled up. You're lying. Dash's voice dropped to a whisper. Mac, play the surveillance tape. Hayes' own voice filled the room. Maybe I'll keep you around after we deal with him. Could use a pretty little maid. The color drained from Hayes' face. That was just talk. I didn't mean. The knife slashed again, deeper this time. Hayes screamed. Wrong answer. Footsteps on the stairs. Corinne, drawn by Hayes' cry. She froze in the doorway, taking in the scene. Babe, Hayes called. Tell him it wasn't like that. Dash turned to his wife, his voice arctic. Yes, Corinne, tell me what it was like. She wrapped her arms around herself, shrinking under his gaze. I didn't know, Dash. About the drugs, about Ruby. He said he was helping with Mom's treatment, and you believed him? Contempt dripped from each word. You let this piece of filth into our home, around our daughter, because he promised to pay some bills? He was blackmailing me. Tears streamed down her face. Said he'd tell Mom's doctors to stop treatment if I didn't cooperate. I was scared. Shut up. Hayes snarled. You stupid bot. Dash's fist crashed into his jaw, snapping his head back. You don't speak to her. Not anymore. He turned back to Corinne. How much? What? The treatments. How much did he actually pay? Fresh tears fell as understanding dawned. The hospital called yesterday, said they haven't received a payment in 3 months. Mom's being moved to hospice care next week. Dash nodded, pieces clicking into place. He'd seen the bank withdrawals, thousands of dollars, supposedly for cancer treatments. all of it pocketed by Hayes, while Corinne's mother withered away. Please, Hayes whimpered. I can get you the money. All of it. Just let me. Money? Dash grabbed Hayes' hair, forcing him to look at Corinne. Look at her. Look at what you did to her. To my family. You think this is about money? I'm sorry. I'll disappear. Never come back. No. Dash released him with a shove. You don't get to run. You don't get to hide. You're going to face everything you've done. Starting now. He pulled out his phone, dialing a memorized number. Frank? It's time. Bring them in. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Hayes' eyes widened in panic. What are you doing? Teaching you about consequences. Dash's smile held no warmth. But first, you're going to tell these nice officers everything. The drugs, the fraud, the blackmail. Every detail. They'll kill me. You don't understand. There are people. I understand perfectly. Dash leaned close, his voice deadly quiet. You're going to talk. Because if you don't, if you leave out one single detail, I'll find you. And we'll have another conversation about consequences. One you won't walk away from. Red and blue lights strobed through the windows as police cars surrounded the house. Hayes slumped in defeat, knowing his choices had narrowed to prison or a painful death. Dash straightened as Frank entered, followed by uniformed officers. Detective, these men have some interesting stories to tell. I bet they do. Frank surveyed the scene. The bound men, the evidence laid out neatly, Hayes' blood-streaked face. He raised an eyebrow at Dash. They resisted arrest, Dash said flatly. Frank nodded, understanding. Multiple times, I'm sure. He turned to his officers. Processed the scene. Everything by the book. As the police began their work, Dash moved to where Corinne still stood frozen. Ruby's packing. She'll stay with Sarah until this is sorted out. Dash, don't. He cut her off. We'll discuss this later. Right now, I need you to make a statement. Tell them everything Hayes did. Everything he promised. Everything he threatened. Leave nothing out. She nodded, tears still falling. What about Mom? I'll handle the hospital bills. But Corinne? His eyes bored into hers. After this is done, after Hayes is dealt with, we're going to have a very long talk about trust and consequences. Chapter 6. The Trap and the Twist. As the police processed Hayes and his crew, Dash pulled Frank aside. There's more. Isn't there always? Frank sighed. What are we looking at? Hayes was working for someone bigger. This wasn't just about drugs and petty crime. Check his phone. Look for connections to Shield Development Corporation. Frank's eyebrows rose. The real estate company? They're backed by some serious players. Exactly. Hayes was their muscle, pressuring homeowners to sell. My house was supposed to be their new distribution hub. Dash handed over a USB drive. Mac pulled their communication records. It goes deep, Frank. Politicians, judges, dirty cops. Jesus. Frank pocketed the drive. This could blow up the whole town. That's the plan. A commotion from the living room interrupted them. Hayes was talking, words spilling out in a desperate attempt to save himself. Higher-ups, they'll kill me if I talk. You don't understand. They've got judges in their pocket, cops on payroll. Keep talking. Frank's recorder captured every word. Names, dates, details. As Hayes spilled his guts, Dash moved through the house, examining what they'd done to his home. Empty bottles everywhere. Cigarette burns in the furniture. Drugs stashed in his daughter's stuffed animals. His phone buzzed. Max sending an update. Got into Hayes' cloud storage. You need to see this. The files painted an ugly picture. Shield Development had been systematically targeting homes in the area, using Hayes and other thugs to intimidate residents into selling below market value. Those who resisted faced escalating pressure, vandalism, threats, staged police raids based on anonymous tips. But Hayes had gotten sloppy. He'd kept records of everything, payoffs to local officials, blackmail material, accounts of which cops were on the take. A career criminal's insurance policy now turned evidence. Dash returned to the living room as Frank's men led Hayes toward a patrol car. Time for the final touch. Hayes. His voice stopped the procession. One last thing. Before anyone could react, Dash's fist crashed into Hayes' stomach, doubling him over. A knee to the face sent him sprawling. That's assault. Hayes spat blood. You all saw it. The officers looked to Frank, who was suddenly very interested in his notebook. Saw what? Looks like you tripped to me. Must be those broken fingers affecting your balance. Hayes glared at Dash as he was hauled up. This isn't over. You're right. Dash's voice carried no emotion. Because you're going to make a full confession. Every crime, every accomplice, every dirty deal. If you leave anything out, if you try to protect anyone. He leaned close, whispering. I'll come for you in prison. And what I did tonight will seem like a massage compared to what happens then. Fear replaced defiance in Hayes' eyes. He knew. They all knew. Dash wasn't making threats. He was stating facts. As the patrol cars pulled away, Frank approached Dash. We'll need your official statement. Tomorrow. I need to get Ruby settled first. And the rest of Hayes' crew? Frank gestured to the other bound men. Dash's smile was predatory. Oh, I have special plans for them. A lesson in humiliation they'll never forget. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Police photographed evidence, took statements, cataloged the damage. Through it all, Dash watched, memorizing faces, noting which officers seemed too interested in Hayes' files. Finally, only Frank remained. You sure about this next part? They violated my home, Dash replied. Terrorized my daughter. Now they learn what humiliation feels like. He turned to Hayes' remaining crew members, still bound and groaning on the floor. Mac entered, carrying a large duffel bag. Gentlemen, Dash addressed the thugs. You thought it was funny making my daughter serve you? Making her clean up your mess? Let's see how you like it. He pulled out electric clippers from the bag. The harsh buzz filled the room as he approached the first man. No, man. Come on. The thug pleaded as Dash grabbed his hair. The clippers made quick work of their carefully styled hair, leaving patchy scalps and wounded pride. Next came the clothes, cut away with tactical shears, leaving them in their underwear. Mac, the special outfits. Mac pulled out several bright pink cocktail dresses, deliberately chosen 2 sizes too small. The thug's eyes widened in horror. You can't. I can. I will. And you're going to smile while doing it. Dash's voice promised pain for disobedience. Consider this your audition for your new career in entertainment. One by one, they were forced into the dresses, the material straining against their bulky frames. Dash took photos, ensuring their faces were clearly visible. These go public if any of you cause trouble, he warned. Now, let's practice your dance routine. For the next hour, he made them perform degrading acts, twirling, curtsying, singing off-key while Frank recorded everything. Their masculine pride shattered with each humiliating display. Please, one of them sobbed. We're sorry. Sorry. Dash grabbed his chin. You watched my daughter cry, laughed at her fear, made her clean your filth. Sorry doesn't begin to cover it. He forced them to continue until they were exhausted, makeup running with sweat and tears. Their spirits broken more thoroughly than any beating could achieve. The video goes to your associates, Dash informed them. Your gang contacts. Your street friends. Anyone thinks about retaliating. This goes viral. You'll never live it down. Through it all, Hayes watched from his restraints, forced to witness the destruction of his crew's reputation. His empire wasn't just being dismantled. It was being humiliated out of existence. One last thing. Dash turned to Frank. The safe in the master bedroom. Time to see what other secrets Hayes has been keeping. Frank followed him upstairs. The safe was amateur work, easily cracked. Inside, they found what they were looking for. A leather-bound ledger filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Mother of God, Frank whispered, flipping through pages. Half the city council, 3 judges, police captains. Hayes kept receipts, Dash noted. Smart criminal, stupid man. This is bigger than we thought. These people, they won't go down easily. No. Dash's face hardened. But they will go down. Hayes was their sword. Now he'll be their executioner. By the time we're done, the whole corrupt system burns. He took the ledger, adding it to their evidence pile. The pieces were in place. Hayes singing to save himself, his crew broken and discredited, the paper trail leading to bigger fish. "Take them in," he ordered Frank. "Keep Hayes isolated. No visitors, no calls. I don't want anyone getting to him before he finishes his confession." As the police led the cross-dressing thugs away, Dash surveyed his violated home. The first phase of his revenge was complete. Hayes destroyed, his crew humiliated, his operation exposed. But this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, the real war would start. The evidence would begin leaking. The corrupt officials would start turning on each other. The whole house of cards would collapse. But that was tomorrow's battle. Tonight, he had a daughter to comfort and a wife to confront. The personal and the professional intertwined, each demanding its own brand of justice. Mac packed up his surveillance gear, pausing at the door. "They'll try to bury this, you know. People with this much power, they don't go quietly. Let them try." Dash's voice was steel. They thought Hayes was dangerous? They're about to learn what real danger feels like. He looked at the ledger in his hands, thinking of the names listed inside. Politicians, judges, dirty cops, all of them complicit in Hayes' operation. All of them about to learn a harsh lesson about consequences. The night was ending, but the war was just beginning. Hayes had been the visible enemy, the obvious target. Now it was time to root out the real cancer, the corruption that had allowed him to flourish. Dash allowed himself a small, cold smile. They thought they were untouchable, these men in expensive suits who pulled strings from the shadows. They were wrong. Just like Hayes, they would learn that some soldiers never stop fighting. Some warriors never lay down their weapons. Some enemies should never have been made. Chapter 7. Exposing the Network. Mayor Alastair Harding's office reeked of stale coffee and bureaucracy. The man himself sat behind his mahogany desk, his face pale as he flipped through Hayes' ledger. These names. Harding's hands trembled. Judge Morrison? Police Commissioner Blake? Half the city council? All of them dirty, Dash confirmed, standing at parade rest. Hayes kept detailed records, dates, amounts, specific favors. The whole network laid bare. "Why bring this to me?" Harding looked up, studying Dash's face. "With evidence like this, you could go to the FBI, state police." "Because your name isn't in that book." Dash tapped the ledger. "I've watched you for weeks. You blocked Shield Development's attempts to bypass zoning laws. Rejected their campaign contributions. You're one of the few clean ones left." Harding stood, pacing behind his desk. "Do you understand what you're asking? These people, they're not just criminals. They're pillars of the community, business leaders. Their families have run this town for generations, and now they'll face justice." Dash's voice cut like a blade. "The question is, are you with me, or do I need to find another way?" The mayor stopped pacing, his shoulders straightening. "My father was mayor before me. He taught me that power means responsibility, to the people, to the truth. What do you need? Your influence, your connections to legitimate media. When this breaks, they'll try to bury it. We need the story too big to kill. They'll come after us both. Let them try." Dash's smile held no warmth. "I've dealt with their attack dog. The masters won't fare any better." Over the next hour, they planned. Harding had contacts at major newspapers, reporters hungry for a career-making story. They would release the evidence in waves, first the small fish, then working up the chain. "Start with Officer Reynolds," Dash suggested, pointing to an entry. "Beat cop on Hayes' payroll. Small enough to seem manageable, big enough to grab attention." Harding nodded. When he turns on his superiors to save himself, it adds credibility. Makes the bigger revelations harder to dismiss. Exactly. Then we move up, Detective Sanders, Captain Phillips, Commissioner Blake. Each one pressured to save themselves by implicating those above. A cascade of betrayal. Harding's eyes gleamed with purpose. But Judge Morrison is the key. Once he falls, the whole system crashes. Dash pulled out his phone, dialing Mac. "Start the upload. Everything we have on Reynolds, bank records, surveillance photos, Hayes logs." Within hours, the first story broke. Officer Daniel Reynolds arrested on corruption charges, evidence suggesting ties to organized crime. By evening, he was cooperating with internal affairs, naming names to save his pension. Dash watched from his temporary apartment as the dominoes began to fall. Captain Phillips attempted to flee, only to be caught at the Canadian border. Detective Sanders had a convenient heart attack before he could testify, but Hayes' records were damning enough without him. Commissioner Blake is calling an emergency press conference. Mac reported through the phone. Our sources say he's planning to deny everything. Send the photos. Dash's command was cold. The ones from his private meetings with Hayes. The press conference dissolved into chaos as reporters received anonymous emails mid-speech. Blake's stammered denials died in his throat as images of him accepting envelopes of cash played on journalists' phones. Judge Morrison proved wilier. He called in favors, attempted to have evidence suppressed, even tried to issue arrest warrants for Dash and Harding. But he'd underestimated their preparation. Your Honor. Dash's voice cut through the judge's chambers like a gunshot. He'd slipped in during lunch recess, past security that now answered to honest leaders. Let's talk about your retirement options. Morrison reached for his panic button. Nothing happened. Looking for your private security? Dash placed a USB drive on the desk. They received some interesting videos this morning. Seems you enjoy certain proclivities that aren't quite judicial. You're blackmailing a federal judge? Morrison sputtered. No, I'm offering you a choice. Resign citing health reasons, cooperate fully with the investigation, and these files stay private. Fight us. Dash shrugged. Well, I hear prison can be especially hard on corrupt judges with exotic tastes. Morrison broke. They all broke in the end. The mighty brought low by their own greed, their own arrogance in believing they were untouchable. Harding proved an able ally, using his position to ensure the investigation couldn't be derailed. When Shield Development's lawyers tried to threaten witnesses, anonymous donors funded the victim's legal defense. When dirty cops attempted to lose evidence, multiple copies emerged from secure locations. You're destroying the old guard, Harding observed one evening, watching another prominent figure led away in handcuffs. This town will never be the same. Good. Dash's voice was granite. The rot needed to be cut out. All of it. And after? What happens when the dust settles? Justice happens. Real justice, not the kind that comes with a price tag. By week's end, the transformation was undeniable. Shield Development's offices stood empty, their executives either arrested or fled. The police department underwent a purge, with honest officers finally able to speak out. The city council chamber held more vacant seats than filled ones. Through it all, Dash moved like an avenging spirit, ensuring no stone remained unturned, no corrupt official escaped scrutiny. The ledger had been just the beginning. Each arrest led to new revelations, new threads to pull. The town's power structure, built on decades of corruption and favors, collapsed like a house of cards. And from the rubble, something new began to emerge. A system based on merit rather than money, on justice rather than influence. We've done it, Harding announced, watching the last of Judge Morrison's files being carried out by federal agents. The network is exposed. The corruption purged. No. Dash's eyes were cold. We've only cleared the ground. Now comes the hard part, building something better. Chapter 8. A New Beginning. The morning sun glinted off Ruby's new college dormitory as Dash helped carry in her boxes. Stanford University, 3,000 miles and a lifetime away from the darkness they'd left behind. Dad, I can handle this, Ruby protested, though her eyes shone with happiness. You don't have to carry everything. Let me do this. His voice was gentler with her, though no less firm. You focus on your roommate and settling in. He'd chosen Stanford carefully, researching security measures, vetting the staff, ensuring no traces of Hayes' network reached this far. Ruby would have a fresh start, untainted by the past. The soccer coach reviewed your highlight reel, he mentioned, setting down a box of textbooks. She's impressed. Wants you to try out for the team. Ruby's face lit up. Really? But I thought with everything that happened, you're stronger than what happened to you. Dash gripped her shoulder. You survived. You fought. Now you thrive. He'd made sure of that. The college fund he'd established was ironclad, fed by assets seized from Hayes' operation. His daughter would never want for anything again. The dormitory bustled with other families moving in, normal people living normal lives. Ruby watched them with a mix of longing and determination. "Will you be okay?" she asked quietly. "Back home with everything? I'm changing careers." He straightened a photo on her desk, her last soccer tournament, before Hayes. "Private security consulting. Using what I know to help others protect themselves. Like a guardian angel?" She smiled, the expression reminding him painfully of Corinne's old warmth. "More like a guard dog. One with very sharp teeth. You're old enough to make your own choices." He kept his tone carefully controlled. "Just remember what we learned. Trust must be earned back. It's never freely given again." Ruby hugged him fiercely. "I love you, Dad. Thank you for everything." He held her close, remembering the terrified girl who had called him from a closet, begging for help. She was stronger now, tempered by adversity rather than broken by it. "I'll always come for you," he promised. "No matter what. No matter where." Later, watching her chat with her new roommate, Dash saw glimpses of the carefree girl she'd been. The darkness hadn't won. His daughter had survived, and would grow stronger for it. His phone buzzed, a text from Frank. Another crew trying to muscle in on Hayes' old territory. They thought the vacuum meant opportunity. They would learn differently. Ruby waved as he left, already making friends, already moving forward. She had inherited his resilience, his refusal to be victimized. She would thrive here, become something greater than the sum of her traumas. Dash drove home with purpose burning in his veins. The war for his family might be over, but the battle for his town had just begun. He would be its guardian, its deterrent against the darkness that preyed on the weak. The security consulting firm was just a cover, a legitimate front for his real work. His client list grew daily as word spread. If you needed protection, if you needed justice, Dash Kincaid was the man to call. He kept tabs on Hayes in prison, ensuring no early release, no special treatment. The message was clear. Cross this line, threaten the innocent, and consequences would follow. The old Dash had been a soldier, bound by rules of engagement and chain of command. This new version was something else, a force of nature, unfettered by red tape, guided by his own moral compass. Some called him a vigilante, others, a hero. He didn't care about labels. He cared about results, about making sure no other family endured what his had suffered. Chapter 9. The Peace of a Warrior. Dash's security consulting office occupied a modest building downtown. No flashy signs or advertisements. His clients found him through reputation alone. "Another case closed," Mac announced, dropping a file on Dash's desk. "The Henderson family's stalker won't be bothering them again. Hospital or jail?" "Jail. Though he'll need the hospital once his cellmates learn what he did to those kids." Dash nodded, satisfied. Justice came in many forms. Sometimes through the system, sometimes despite it. His phone lit up, a text from Ruby. She'd made the soccer team, started as forward in their last game. His daughter, conquering her own battles, finding her own strength. The town had changed in the months since Hayes' downfall. The corrupt power structure was gone, replaced by something more transparent, more accountable. But human nature remained constant. There would always be predators, always be victims needing protection. That's where Dash came in. His military training, combined with the brutal lessons learned during Hayes' takedown, made him uniquely qualified to stand between the wolves and the sheep. He took special satisfaction in cases involving families, children at risk. Each victory felt like an echo of his own battle, a chance to prevent another Ruby from being terrorized, another home from being violated. Corinne had remarried, a doctor she'd met during her mother's treatment. Dash felt nothing at the news, no lingering pain or jealousy. That chapter was closed, cauterized by betrayal and sealed by time. His new life suited him better. The peace he'd found wasn't the soft contentment of civilian life, but the earned tranquility of a warrior who had found his true purpose. The next case file waited on his desk, a mother fleeing an abusive ex, desperate for protection. Dash read her story with cold focus, already planning, already preparing to introduce another predator to the consequences of their actions. This was his calling now. Not a soldier bound by orders, not a victim seeking revenge, but something new. a guardian who understood that sometimes justice needed teeth, needed claws, needed the willingness to do what others couldn't or wouldn't. He was at peace with who he'd become, what he represented. The darkness had tried to destroy his family, but instead had forged him into something stronger. Now he used that strength to protect others, to ensure no other father felt the helpless rage he'd experienced that night in Afghanistan. The sun set over his changed town as Dash reviewed security plans and threat assessments. He was home, not in the house that held too many bitter memories, but in this new role, this new purpose. His phone buzzed again, Ruby sending photos from soccer practice. He smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. His daughter was thriving, healing, growing beyond her trauma. That was his greatest victory, more meaningful than any revenge against Hayes or exposure of corruption. The peace he'd found wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Each day brought new battles, new chances to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life he was meant for. Dash Kincaid, once a soldier, now a guardian. The man who had lost everything and forged something stronger from the ashes. His war had ended, but his mission continued. And in the dark places where predators gathered, his name was whispered with fear. Not because he was a hero or a villain, but because he was something far more dangerous. A man who had faced the darkness and learned to master it, to turn it against those who would prey on the innocent. This was his peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the satisfaction of purpose. The knowledge that while evil existed in the world, it would find no easy prey, no unguarded victims. Not while he stood watch. The warrior had found his peace in eternal vigilance, and he regretted nothing. Epilogue. 10 years later. The headquarters of Kincaid Security Solutions dominated 3 floors of a downtown office building. Inside the main conference room, Darius Dash Kincaid studied the wall of monitors displaying ongoing operations across the country. At 52, his hair had gone steel gray at the temples, but his physical presence remained imposing. His eyes just as sharp as the day he'd taken down Hayes. Team 2 reports success in Chicago, announced James Chun, Dash's head of operations and a former Army Ranger. The trafficking ring never saw us coming. 12 victims rescued, all perpetrators in custody. Dash nodded, marking another victory. His company had evolved far beyond simple security consulting. They were now the premier agency for handling situations that required more direct intervention than law enforcement could provide. Update on the Vegas situation? Dash asked, focusing on a particular screen. Surveillance confirms the casino management is skimming from employee pension funds, Chin reported. Same pattern as the Thompson case. Corporate wolves thinking they can prey on working people. Put Marcus on it. Make it clear what happens to companies that steal from their workers. The Thompson case had made headlines 2 years ago. A major corporation's entire board of directors exposed for massive fraud. No one could prove Kincaid Security's involvement, but the business world had gotten the message. Cross certain lines, and consequences would follow. Sir? Sean hesitated. There's a potential client waiting in your office. Says she's an old friend. Dash checked the security feed. Sarah Miller, Frank's daughter, and now a federal prosecutor, stood examining the military memorabilia on his office walls. How's Frank doing? Dash asked as he entered, closing the door behind him. Sarah turned, smiling sadly. Stable, but the cancer's aggressive. He wanted me to deliver this personally. She placed a thick file on his desk. One last case he thinks you should know about. Frank had retired 5 years ago, but his network of contacts remained invaluable. If he thought something needed Dash's attention, it was serious. He also wanted me to tell you that Hayes is up for parole next month. Dash's expression didn't change, but temperature in the room seemed to drop. Is he now? The hearing's already been denied. Sarah's smile turned predatory. Seems the parole board received extensive documentation about his continued connections to criminal enterprises from inside prison. Imagine that. Dash sat behind his desk, gesturing for Sarah to do the same. Tell Frank I appreciate the heads up. Now, what's in the file? Remember Shield Development? Turns out they had a sister company in Boston, using the same playbook Hayes used here. Forcing out homeowners, corrupting officials, destroying lives. Dash opened the file, scanning quickly. The patterns were familiar, too familiar. They never learned. We can't touch them officially. Too many politicians in their pocket, too many judges owned. Officially being the key word. Dash pressed a button on his desk. Chun, clear my schedule for next week. And contact our Boston office. Sarah stood to leave. I should maintain plausible deniability from here. But Dad thought, given what they did to your family, tell Frank I'll handle it. And Sarah? Get him the best oncologists. Money's no object. After she left, Dash activated a secure line. Ruby, how's my girl? Dad. His daughter's voice came through clearly. At 22, Ruby had grown into a formidable woman. Stanford graduate, pro soccer player, and, though few knew it, occasionally involved in her father's more specialized operations. How's the tournament? We're in the semifinals. The German team's tough, but we've got their number. She paused. I saw the Boston file come across the secure server. Need any help? You focus on bringing home that World Cup. I've got this one. Just like old times? He could hear her smile. Better than old times. We're smarter now. After hanging up, Dash reviewed the Boston intelligence. SHIELD Development's tactics brought back memories. Memories of Ruby cleaning for thugs, of Corinne's tearful confession, of Hayes' screams as justice was served. Speaking of Corinne, he checked his intel feed. His ex-wife had found peace in her new life. Her mother had survived cancer thanks to the treatments Dash had funded. Her new husband, the doctor, treated her well. They had a young son now, and Dash ensured from a distance that they remained safe. Not for Corinne's sake, but because Ruby loved her half-brother. Mac's face appeared on a secure screen. Though semi-retired, he remained Dash's go-to for technical operations. Got those Boston schematics you wanted, boss? Their security's good, but... Mac's grin was wicked. Not good enough. Full analysis on my desk by morning. We're going to shut them down properly. Like we did Hayes? No. Dash's smile was cold. Better. Last time was personal revenge. This time it's prevention. No one else's family gets destroyed by these predators. After finishing the day's operations, Dash drove to the cemetery. He did this once a month, visiting the graves of those who hadn't survived Hayes' operation. 3 innocent bystanders killed in the crossfire during the final raids. Their families were well provided for, college funds established for their children, but the weight of those losses still rode his shoulders. We're still fighting, he told the silent stones. Still making sure it means something. His phone buzzed, a text from Harding. The former mayor had gone on to the governor's mansion, his anti-corruption platform resonating statewide. They maintained a careful alliance, Harding working within the system, Dash operating in the shadows where laws and regulations couldn't reach. The message was brief. SHIELD Development trying to expand west. 3 city councils already compromised. Dash's reply was equally short. Not for long. 10 years had taught him patience, taught him to build networks and systems rather than relying on brute force. His company employed hundreds now, many of them veterans like himself, others survivors of corruption and violence who'd chosen to fight back. They were more than a security firm. They were a shield between predators and prey, between corruption and justice. When the law failed, when the system was rigged, people came to them. Hayes had taken everything from him, but from that loss Dash had forged something unprecedented. His operatives infiltrated corporations, exposed corruption, protected whistleblowers. His technology tracked criminal networks, his lawyers found legal pressure points, his financial experts followed money trails. And when all else failed, when the corrupt and powerful thought themselves untouchable, that's when the old Dash emerged. The warrior. The man who had orchestrated Hayes' downfall and dismantled an entire corrupt network. Those operations were rare now, but they happened. Sometimes justice needed teeth. Sometimes evil only understood force. For those cases, Dash maintained a special team. Veterans like himself who understood that some threats couldn't be handled through official channels. Ruby knew about these operations, but rarely participated. He'd made sure she had choices he never had, chances at a normal life. But she'd inherited his sense of justice, his refusal to look away from wrongdoing. She helped when she could, between soccer seasons and her graduate studies in criminal justice. His phone buzzed again, Chin, with updates from the Chicago operation. The rescued trafficking victims were safe, receiving medical care and counseling. Their testimonies would help take down 3 more criminal networks. This was Dash's real legacy. Not the revenge against Hayes, not the exposure of corruption, but the creation of a force for justice. His company took no government contracts, answered to no political masters. They chose their own battles, protected those who needed protection. The sun set as Dash drove home, not to the house where Hayes had violated his family, but to a secure compound outside town. Ruby stayed there when she visited, and his most sensitive operations were coordinated from the underground command center. He thought about Hayes, rotting in prison, about Corinne, finding peace in her new life, about Ruby, thriving despite her trauma, about Frank, fighting cancer with the same determination he'd shown fighting corruption. They'd all been changed by those events 10 years ago. Some broken, some strengthened, some transformed entirely. But the biggest change had been in Dash himself. He was no longer just a soldier, no longer just a father seeking revenge. He'd become something more, a guardian, a protector, a force for justice in a world where justice too often came with a price tag. The compound's gates opened automatically as he approached. Inside, dozens of screens monitored operations worldwide. His teams never slept. There was always another predator to stop, another victim to protect, another wrong to right. Chun waited with the latest intelligence from Boston. Shield development wouldn't know what hit them. This time there would be no Hayes to take the fall. Dash's operation would expose everyone, from the street thugs to the corporate boardrooms. This was his life now. Not the peace he'd once dreamed of, but a different kind of peace. The satisfaction of purpose, of knowing that because of him and his organization, there were fewer Hayes-type predators in the world, fewer families suffering what his had endured. Ruby would inherit it all someday. The company, the networks, the responsibility. She'd already shown the same tactical mind, the same commitment to justice. But she'd tempered his ruthlessness with compassion, finding ways to help victims recover rather than just punishing perpetrators. Dash smiled, remembering the frightened girl who'd called him from a closet. She'd grown into a warrior in her own right, but one who fought with hope rather than rage. Maybe that was the real victory, that Hayes and his ilk hadn't destroyed her capacity for joy, for mercy. The screens flickered with activity, operations in Chicago wrapping up, surveillance in Boston beginning, threats being identified and neutralized worldwide. This was Dash's empire, built from the ashes of his shattered home. Hayes had thought himself a predator, had thought he could destroy Dash's family with impunity. Instead, he'd catalyzed the creation of something far more powerful, an organization that hunted predators, that protected families, that brought consequences to those who thought themselves above justice. Tomorrow, they would begin dismantling Shield Development's Boston operation. But tonight, Dash allowed himself a moment of reflection. 10 years ago, he'd been a soldier seeking revenge. Now he commanded a private army dedicated to prevention rather than vengeance. The night deepened as Dash reviewed intelligence reports. Somewhere in Boston, corrupt executives slept peacefully, believing themselves untouchable. Soon they would learn what Hayes had learned, that true justice couldn't be bought, couldn't be corrupted, couldn't be escaped. And in his prison cell, Hayes would hear about another corporate empire falling, another corruption network exposed, and know that his actions had created not just an enemy, but an entire system dedicated to destroying men like him. This was Dash's true revenge, not just punishing one predator, but creating a force that hunted all predators. Hayes had tried to destroy his family. Instead, he'd helped forge something indestructible. The warrior had found his peace in eternal vigilance, and the night was still young. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.